Ladies and gentlemen, this is a big one here. I could not think of a better way to continue to celebrate the 3-year anniversary of the Sports Report and now Sportswire Radio with arguably one of the most important people in the professional wrestling business. Forget Vince McMahon. Forget Tony Khan. Forget Scott D'Amore. Forget Billy Corgan of the NWA. We have the best professional wrestling owner in the business, in the world. He's here to talk about his story, his journey with the LWF, quickly one of the hottest wrestling companies in the world. They just came off a highly successful event, the Winter of Discontent. We are also going to see the LWF back in action once again coming up here February the 12th, Valentine's Day weekend for the Landshire Riot. Really, really excited about that. So without further ado, here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show, the owner of the LWF, Mr. Steve Bibby. My friend, how are you?
Very good after that. That does wonders for the confidence.
I've heard. Listen, I've been doing this for about 3 years, and we do it with not just wrestlers. We do it with politicians. We do it with universities. We do it with all types of people, and they say the same thing. They go, "Wow, you know what, Tom? Now I'm really comfortable. Now forget being nervous. You just gave me the greatest intro of my lifetime, so I'm ready to go. I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm ready to rumble, and this is a tremendous honor for us, sir. I cannot thank you enough for all that you've given us in terms of promoting the LWF, the opportunity to speak with your wrestlers, everything that your company has done. And for those that are watching and listening to this, and for the first time that may not have heard the LWF, because obviously we have a big following all over the world, and especially here in the United States. So this is definitely going to be a unique opportunity. Talk to me about the LWF for those that might be hearing about it for the first time.
Well, the LWF was... And I'll let you in on something here because I don't think any of my guys have mentioned this before. The LWF was actually created by accident. I was wanting to be a commentator, and I decided that there wasn't a whole lot going on in our part of the north of England, in Lancashire. There was a lot going on either side of us, but not in that particular area. So I put the feelers out to try and find out who would want to be want to give professional wrestling a go as in a training sense, and we were born from there. So it has been the LWF's been running now for 4 years, and since lockdown ended, we have skyrocketed really, and we pride ourselves on the usage of young up and coming talent and established talent, and put a mix of that on the shows, as well as a mix of old school wrestling, old school British wrestling, and modern day stuff as well. Some edgy content, but mainly a family show. It's got something for everybody, the LWF.
Oh, it absolutely does. No question about it. And I think also that's what kind of sets you guys apart from some other companies, and obviously covering you guys, getting to know most of the locker room now at this point, I'd say over the past 5 or 6 months, is that you guys do rely on homegrown talent and you put them in there to the fire. There are some other companies that we've worked with, and you've even been a part of one of them, that they kind of have the talent on there that they've already been established. But you guys pretty much almost every month have new talent debuting. Talk about that importance of just literally putting your homegrown talent right into the fire.
It's tremendously important because I think a lot of people can begin in this business and have the confidence drained very quickly. And I think just knowing that wherever you're working at, have faith in you and that they're going to deliver if you deliver is a big thing. And the more new people we bring into this business, the bigger it's going to get, and the more it's going to continue to grow. You've got to keep looking to the future, or else it's going to have an expiry date and a limit on it. And I don't think pro wrestling in this country has ever really peaked quite this much for a very, very long time. So we want to keep that momentum, and we want to keep up there. And the only way to do that is through bringing new people through.
And you guys have definitely done that. And I feel like since you guys came back over the past 3 or 4 months, especially, the momentum is skyrocketed. Whereas, let's say, even 4 or 5, 6 months ago, when you guys came back the first time during the summer, it was almost like we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know. And then all of a sudden, you guys have rocketed. And I really feel like where you guys really skyrocketed is the Vias for Vengeance, and especially the Fightmare for Christmas. That's where I really felt when you had the mayor of Crawley there, you had a crowd that it was obviously maybe the most successful event in the company's history for you, especially with everything you've went through in terms of getting the company back, getting everybody safe out there. What did the Fightmare for Christmas, that event, mean to the company in the overall success?
Well, the Fightmare before Christmas was really a big risk for me, because we were teetering on the brink of 150 crowds, something like that. Which for a company hasn't been going that long, to have that kind of average was a real achievement in itself. But what I said is I want to do the town hall in the biggest venue in the town. It's an expensive place, not going to lie.
But, no comment.
I had to take that risk, because that show was never about financial gain. It was about getting eyes on us. And we managed to do exactly what I wanted. The show itself had, I don't know if you know about this, show itself had a crazy 20-minute delay due to a power cut 1 minute before we were about to go out on.
I actually have to say I did not know that, because I did not ask the asset Stephen Cross, Wildfire Nate Reese, or your champion, who we'll get to in a few minutes, obviously the top of the table, Reynaldo. So no, we're not like some other shows or some other wrestling podcasters. I mean, even though we're not a podcast, not a wrestling podcast, that'll say, oh, I know everything that happened, and I found out this and backstage, and I got every little thing. No, we don't ask. We try to treat you guys as the professionals, and we don't try to pretend that we know every little thing about the LWF. So I did not know that, to be totally transparent.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that was like 1 minute before going out, and the power went out. So I was like, this is my whole year's work. I know, but I persisted, and I was stubborn, and they were saying, like, oh, we'll go out and we'll do it with no music, or we'll go and we'll just shout. What? We'll have no microphones. I was like, that is not happening. So luckily the stubbornness paid off. But that show did mean a lot, because it established us as something a bit bigger. You know, we'd done the biggest venue, and it was sort of, this is the goal from now on, to be able to continue to do venues like this and be successful enough so that there's never a worry about doing them.
Well, I have to say, after knowing that, I mean, you must have been relieved when everything all of a sudden was able to work. You must have been like, "Oof, thank God!" It must have been.
It's an understatement. It didn't do my anxiety any good.
Well, listen, thank God you obviously got things off. And I do have to say, going back to the Fightmare for Christmas, there was no pressure, right? You got the mayor there, you got your biggest crowd in the company's history, and you had a main event, which we had spoke about quite a bit here on the show. And we'll get to obviously some current stuff here in the LWF, but it'll tie into it. And obviously, that was Reynaldo and Nick Cutter. Nick Cutter was your Castle Cup winner, and Reynaldo, obviously, what a comeback, what a story, all the adversity that he had went through, and what a call that you had. I'm almost tempted to say, well, how did you keep a voice after all of that, with everything that was going on there in terms of Reynaldo, and, you know, not just for you specifically, but everybody in that audience. So you almost have to talk to me about that main event between Reynaldo and Nick Cutter. And what did that main event mean? And just overall the crowd. I mean, to say the 12th man was there, it would be an understatement, just how everybody reacted after he won.
Well, I mean, this sort of ties in a little bit with the start to the show, because it delayed us. So we would, if you thought that was loud, if you times that by 2, it would have been that loud had we not had the delay, because some guys had to go home. So you would have had I mean, the ceiling would have come off, but it was it was the reaction that it was 4 months, 5 months in the making. We had built it up so much that people just needed that moment. And it meant a lot, that main event, because we got the road there was so full of obstacles, and the story was so well crafted that you forgot there was supposed to be something at the end of it. We'd done so much on the build up. They were like, oh yeah, they are going to fight, eventually. And they delivered, and it was a crazy match, and hopefully it will be released, very soon. In its
I saw a
entirety.
comment on YouTube basically saying, when is it going to be released to Power.tv? So
I have
you're
a
under
very
pressure
big
already.
backlog.
I figured that. You guys are definitely no pressure, right? No pressure between editing an event, no pressure between putting it together, no pressure between getting a roster and getting everybody happy. And then on top of that, you got to throw it out there on YouTube and all these other things. So, I mean, the work that you're doing, it is literally God's work. And I got to give a few shout outs. I actually got to give a happy birthday wish to one of my dear friends, the Yak Attack, Jacob Bard, all the way here from New York. He's watching us. He's a huge wrestling fan. So I want to make sure that we give him a shout out. He's listened to a lot of our stuff here when it comes to the LWF. So I definitely want to make sure that we give him a shout out. Also want to give a shout out to my very good friend, Daniel Slavin, who's in the state of Florida right now. So he's watching us. He's a huge fan of what you guys do. So want to give him a huge shout out. So that's what we do here. I told you, Ste Bibby, when we make sure that we get the owner, the boss, the biggest owner in professional wrestling. Like I said, I put out all the stops out there to make sure, because like I said, forget Vince McMahon, forget Tony Khan, forget Billy Corgan. I've got Ste Bibby. He is the man, the myth, the legend. And I do want to talk about, though, your world champion, Reynaldo, because we've had the honor to speak with him 2 times. And surprisingly, he's been a big fan of us. And I have to say, what a story. In the fact, here was a guy many, many years ago that was the world champion in Future Shock Pro Wrestling. He had his own journey, had definitely a detour, a slight detour, would be putting it kindly. And all of a sudden, he's back at the top of the mountain. When I think of wrestling comebacks, and obviously you think about Hulk Hogan's comeback, you think about Edge's comeback right now, you think about Christian's comeback, him winning the world championship in Impact Wrestling. I have to think Terry Funk you could throw in there when he won the ECW title back in 1997. This might be one of the biggest comebacks in wrestling history because he hadn't been a world champion in 10 years. He had been out of the sport. He'd been out of it. And he said it here with us. He was content with his career being the way it was. And all of a sudden now he is your standard bearer. He is your guy that's going to lead the LWF to even bigger heights where you guys are going to be the #1 wrestling company in the world. Talk about your champion, Reynaldo, the top of the table, our reigning, defending LWF world champion, and what he means to this company.
Reynaldo is the perfect symbol for the LWF. He is a great example to anybody of hard work, dedication to your craft, and also as well, he's a wonderful example of enjoying what you do.
Sure.
And he does what he does with a smile on his face. He does what he does with the utmost enthusiasm, and he's got so much passion for what he does. It's not just work for him. He puts his all into it. Even, I mean, you could look at his ring attire and things like that, and how much work he puts into that. Even at Fight Mode Before Christmas in the main event, he knew it was a street fight. He has the Cactus Jack.
I saw that. He was ready to fight.
He obviously worked on that and thought it through. And it's that kind of thing. He's a fabulous example of if you put all that into your character and you enjoy what you do, then you get the biggest rewards. And I know he was out of the business for quite some time, but he came back, and he's also a good example that if you do something for so long and you work on your craft for so long, that you don't really lose it. And he's come back better than ever, I think. I mean, I saw very limited footage of him before he started working with the LWF. It's not the greatest quality footage that I've seen, but I don't see him being losing anything whatsoever. And I think right now with him having the championship and also having the championship to go for before now. It's brought the best out of him.
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. I mean, he hasn't lost a step. He hasn't missed a beat. I mean, he literally looks like he's in just as good a shape, if not better shape, than when he was on the top 10 plus years ago, when he was the world champion in Future Shock Pro Wrestling. Again, it's quite a story. And certainly we were happy for his sake that he avoided the Bob Backlund journey where he loses the title very quickly. Because we did kind of mention it in the second interview.
Yeah.
We had asked Reynaldo, because we had him on right before the Winter of Discontent. We asked him, were you worried about becoming a Bob Backlund, where Bob Backlund wins the title at Survivor Series? Almost, I think, the same time. I think it was about 10 or 11 years when he last held the world title, and then WWF, and then Diesel beats him 3 days later. We almost wondered, hey, Ronaldo, are you worried about losing the title first defense in within 20 plus days? And clearly he wasn't too worried about it, because he successfully defended the championship. I mean, when it comes to him being the champion, do you also see for some of that homegrown talent? Because it's a big deal having Reynaldo. Reynaldo was a big time player many years back. Do you also find for the locker room, in terms of just having a champion like that has had massive success, that it's also good for them in terms of their journey and also for their career?
That's a really good point. I think that sort of gets overlooked when you look at the sentimental side of him winning it. But having him as champion and having him as head of the LWF is a wonderful thing for our academy and for the younger guys, because they're seeing a guy there that's worked for a long time, and he's still now at the stage he's at, winning belts and becoming something and being the top of the pile. And these are guys like 15 years is junior that can learn that there's a long road, this. And I also say it's not just the younger guys, because we will get people coming to our academy who are what 30, 33. They think, oh, I'm too old for this. And I just have to point out Ronaldo. Look at this guy. I mean, he's like he's an evergreen.
He told us his
continues to
age.
do
He
this.
told us his story. We're well aware.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a hard worker. I think his work ethic is the biggest thing for me with Ray. He really has this consistent engine, and he's the best example we could ever have as a champion for the academy. And it's important to look at his impact on the future of the LWF, not just the present and what he's doing now.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. And listen, tell some of those homegrown wrestlers, even some of those older wrestlers, listen, DDP didn't really become a full-time wrestler until I think it was like 40 or 41, and he became a world champion at the age of 43, because I just heard him on the Broken Skull Sessions with Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was talking about that. So listen, Reynaldo is nothing compared to DDP, and we know that he loves DDP. So at the end of the day, listen, those wrestlers, if you're 33, 34, 35, even 36, and you're starting out, you could still do a lot in the professional wrestling world. And the reason
there's actually a great, if you want a very quick, slightly off the rails mention, Sledgehammer Chris Stone for the Wrecking Crew. He began training with us at 39.
Well, I have a feeling we're going to be getting to the Wrecking Crew in a few minutes. I have a very good feeling about that. So we'll actually be getting to the Wrecking Crew in a very few minutes. So in a sense, you clearly know how to lead into something. But before I get to the Wrecking Crew, and obviously huge shout outs to the Wrecking Crew, Davey Getsky and also Chris Stone, because they are our first ever tag team champions. Before we do get to them, I did want to touch upon the academy very quickly, because our own Wildfire Nate Reese was actually teaching yesterday. And talk to me again about the academy. And for those that are watching and listening to this, please also follow the LWF on Instagram at the LWF Wrestling, Twitter at LWF Thought, and also like the Facebook page LWF, so you can get in touch, get involved, and find out why this company is our #1 wrestling company in the world. Talk to me again what the academy has meant to you and to the company.
It's the most important thing because I've seen it grow right from the roots. So it's like we had 13 guys, I think, at the very first session we did. We didn't have a very good ring. It was falling to pieces. It was not fit for purpose, but it was sort of a platform. I have watched them continue to train in some of the least ideal places you could ever imagine, because you've got to start somewhere and you've got to go through these kind of, you've got to get through the forest before you can find the clearing. And we've worked in garages and motel function rooms, and we've obviously, after lockdown, I've used the money we had wisely to get us a solidified place now. So they've been really patient. The guys that have stuck with us, people like Big Ron from Shining Wizard, have been there from the very
Huge shout out
first
to
day.
Big Ron. Big Ron's definitely a big fan of us. We've spoken to Big Ron a few times off the air, so huge shout out to Big Ron.
There's a lot of guys that have been there right from the very start. Disfrasada, one of the masked guys we had at the last show, he's been there from the very beginning. So we've built and built and built, and we've seen people come and go, but we have also given people these experiences of performing in front of crowds, and they can, even if they never do it again. I mean, there's one guy I know, he's a great guy, but he was swamped with work, his family business, but he managed to get on 2 shows, and he was in the very first Lancashire Riot. And he can go back and talk about his time as a wrestler thanks to us. Then you got the other end of the spectrum, which guys you're going to talk about, I know, like Synergy, who are going to be huge. Who we gave, I mean, they didn't come through our academy to begin with, but they were the first. Their first shows were our shows. And now those guys are helping with our academy.
We had them on, and we spoke about that. That was, I think, one of the first times we actually got a hold of the LWF, and we kind of talked about their journey and their career.
Yeah.
And it's, again, amazing just, what you guys bring to the table. I almost have to ask, maybe to make you chuckle, because we've heard from Reynaldo, we've heard from the Scenario Nathan guy. I mean, it's a long list, and we'll try to get to everybody, but they talk about you in just different ways, whether you write them notes after a show or the communication, whatever it might be. I mean, clearly, I don't think Vince McMahon would give notes or letters or just thanking them for what they bring to the LWF. Now that
he just gives checks.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that because I have a radio station, so I can understand some of your managerial duties, so I can certainly appreciate where you're coming from in that sense.
Yeah.
But I'll plead the fifth on that. But what I would like to know, because I'm sure the entire locker room is going to listen to this eventually and watch this as we speak. I mean, what does that mean to you when the talent comes on and talks about either the opportunity you've given them or even those personal notes and what that means to them? Now, what does it mean to you when they talk about you in that way?
Well, that's why I do this. It's never been a money thing, because I don't really make any money. It's never been an ego thing, because I'm not out there in the ring. I'm not doing anything. I'm not involving myself heavily. I do this because I want to say that I've created somebody's career, or I can watch something on the TV and go, I made that happen, or I contributed to that happening. And I think when you get that kind of acknowledgement, that sort of means a bit more than anything. Just somebody saying thanks for everything you've done. I mean, I was always a bit overwhelmed by that when guys used to come to me at the end of a show when I first started doing this, and they'd say thank you for the opportunity. And it was like, I don't know, I almost felt like they didn't need to say that to me because it was them that had done all the work. But I think when you step back and you look at it, you are giving them an opportunity, you are opening the door. And that's the most rewarding thing about being a promoter. I know other people might disagree with that. It can be stressful at times when it comes to the business side of things, but definitely the thing that keeps you going and the thing that stops you sort of thinking about calling it quits or whatever, because I have done that in the past, thing keeps you going is the appreciation you get from the locker room and the roster.
It almost, in a sense, I could see it overwhelms you a little bit even now. It almost essentially, not to say it makes you choke up a little bit, but maybe you're not used to it, because sometimes, again, when you hear someone talk about yourself, it makes you uncomfortable. I mean, because again, we've heard from almost, again, I would say maybe half the locker room by now, either in the past or in the present, and they all say the same things, and they're not just saying it because I put him on the spot, or I tell him talk about Ste Bibby so we can bring him on. No, they're telling me, they're telling my audience that, you know what? You're the hardest working man out there. You put your life into this. You put your blood, sweat, and tears. All the personal notes, the encouragements, even with the LWF Academy. And again, please follow the LWF Academy on Instagram at LWF Training. Again, if you want to go out there and find out, you get a taste of that. But I could tell, though, it really does mean something to you. And I also think that's what it's about in professional wrestling. Because, again, listen, we know that you are going to be the next Vince McMahon. You're going to be better than Vince McMahon. You certainly have more hair than Mr. McMahon. I actually said that on Friday's show. So you have
not at the front.
Oh, well, I'm not going to comment on that. But certainly
Why
you do have. Well, listen, Brett, if you're a fan of the band Poison, Bret Michaels has been wearing the headband for like 40 years. So listen. All right, so I'm sure you got that. So the point is, at the end of the day, don't feel too bad on that sense, but we're still going with it. But it does, I could tell, mean something to you. And I also think, to tie it back into the company, I think it also shows that what this company stands for. You guys are all close together. You guys are a team. You guys are a family. I do a lot of stuff with universities back here in New York and in the tri-state area. And that family theme is always why the different teams we work with are so successful. And is it fair for me to tie it back in to say that the LWF, everybody between the talent, management, and you yourself are a family?
Yes. But also, I think it's important to sort of point out that we will get people coming to work for us on shows that aren't trainees or they're not part of the LWF on a regular basis. And we treat them the same. We welcome everybody through the door, because I've been to places before, and it's not a knock on them, because you sort of run your ship the way it works. If it works, sure, don't change it. But I've been to places before, and I felt like I've walked into somebody's into a family having dinner or something, and I felt like, oh, maybe I should out and leave here. I don't sort of I try to create an environment where people want to come back. You know, otherwise you sort of the enjoyment factor of the show disappears. If everyone enjoys the show, then I've enjoyed it. If I know that one person hasn't had a good experience with us, then that will stick with me. So I think as soon as you walk through the LWF door, you are the LWF family.
Oh, absolutely. No question. Listen, and we certainly feel a small taste of that here. And of course, we are speaking with the owner, the man himself, the legendary Mr. Ste Bibby, of course, of the LWF. And again, if you like what you hear from the LWF, I cannot stress it enough. Please give them a follow on Twitter at LWF. Please also give them a follow on Instagram at the LWF Wrestling. Also like the Facebook page at LWF. Also subscribe to the YouTube page, because this is where you're going to find out why this is our #1 wrestling company out there in the world. Listen, forget about the Royal Rumble upcoming. We have a Rumble coming up here in the LWF we're going to get into here in a little while on February the 12th. Forget about Brock versus Bobby. We were more excited about Reynaldo and Jack Roberts. Forget about what's going on with Seth Rollins. We're more excited to speak about what Wildfire Nate Reese did to Bob Costin. The asset Stephen Cross, we're more excited to speak about him each and every week than almost anybody else I can think out there. And I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And if you like what you hear from us at Sportswire Radio, cannot stress enough, please give us a like and follow at Sportswire Radio. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our content on the radio anytime for free. Sportnarium.com/player. And that also includes somebody else in the LWF, the Guiding Light Isaiah Quinn, and the Guiding Light Radio. His shows are on Sportnarium.com/player. So the Guiding Light Isaiah Quinn, you might want to get on Ste Bibby at some point. I heard you with Big T. I heard you with the It Girl Melody Price, but maybe we got to work on that. But that's certainly for Mr. Quinn to figure out. And I'm sure I'll speak with him off the air, and he'll probably give me a comment or two on that. But in the meantime, we are speaking about all things related here with the LWF, with the owner, Mr. Ste Bibby, and I could not think of a better way than to continue to celebrate the 3-year anniversary of the Sports Report than speaking with Ste Bibby. And I got to bring it up then, Steve, because we kind of teased it. We have tag team champions for the first time. The Wrecking Crew finally evened the score a little bit. We saw their troubles with our own, the asset Stephen Cross. We will definitely get to him in a little while. We saw, obviously, Nick Cutter coming up short against Reynaldo, our top of the table at the Fight Man Before Christmas, but we saw the winter of discontent. I don't know how they pulled it off. I don't know how they found a way to do it, but we do have new tag team champions, and certainly Mr. Davey Getsky, who's no stranger to the show, and of course the big man himself, the big man, the big guns, Mr. Chris Stone. So obviously for our audience watching and listening to this, talk about our first ever tag team champions.
Well, I've had my run-ins with the Wrecking Crew, to say the least. I mean, they are the quintessential bad guys. They do everything in their own way, and they don't care who they trample over to do it. And it's won them the tag titles. That's exactly what happened at Winter of Discontent. They had Nick Cutter in the corner. He didn't even have to do anything. He was simply a decoy, and Shining Wizard took their eye off the ball. And you don't do that with the Wrecking Crew. They will take advantage and they will pick you apart. And it's really sort of the LWF on notice having the Wrecking Crew as champions, because they do hunting. They are like a pack, and they're very unforgiving, very relentless. And I think as well, even we have got like teams like Synergy and people like that. They may have the power and they may be big enough to succeed, but against the Wrecking Crew, you've got to have eyes all over your head. And it's scary that they've won the titles. It really is, because it was a relief that Nick cut to me from a business perspective that Nick Cutter did not beat Reynaldo in December. But now Chris Stone and Davey Getsky have belts. I think we may start seeing the worst of the Wrecking Crew, and that's really saying something.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I actually said that, I believe, on last week's show. I actually said now, in my opinion, the Wrecking Crew right now are actually more dangerous than they were going into the Fight Man Before Christmas. Certainly that when it came to V is for Vengeance. I think right now, to the fact that Getsky and Stone have tag team championships. Remember, 2 belts is bigger than 1. And Nick Cutter, by a long shot, he ain't going anywhere. If I'm in that LWF locker room right now, I would tread very lightly. And I certainly, if I'm the world champion Reynaldo, I would certainly also tread very lightly, because something tells me right now the Wrecking Crew might lay more damage onto the LWF locker room right now than the Bloodline or the Elite did combined.
I think they are a problem to everybody in that locker room. Just like you said, they have no friends. I mean, we saw what happened with Stephen Cross when he tried to team with them in December. They don't play well with others, and they expect you to do their bidding, and they will easily stab you in the back if they need to. Nothing. There's no real compassion there, and that's what makes them so dangerous. They almost dehumanize themselves in order to win, to get the best out of themselves in the ring. And the whole locker room should be worried about what's going on right now. Definitely.
I'd be very worried right now, because I think that they're going to look to take all the gold. I think that locker room in the LWF, you better tread very, very lightly. And we love the asset Stephen Cross. We have him here each and every week. But like you said, he had his problems with the Wrecking Crew. He certainly had his problems when it came to Mr. Cutter and Mr. Getsky and Mr. Stone. And something tells me that those guys, they could want to even the score at any given time when it comes to the Wrecking Crew. But I want to get to another tag team, and that is Synergy, because I do kind of want to touch upon the fact that they have been in the LWF. We've seen them wrestle here on the roster for a while, and I'm sure you're aware of the news here that took place a few different times here over the past month, and especially this weekend, yesterday, most notably, that they were on the WWE Network. I know you had Big Guns Joe on a show recently, and he's been on the WWE Network a bunch of different times. But talk to me about, what do you think that means for you personally and the company that Synergy had arguably the biggest stage that you can have, other than, of course, well, the stage you give everybody?
They are probably, they're a great example of being a pride and joy of a company. Like I said, they didn't come exclusively through our academy, but they've done work with our academy, and we were their first platform. And to know that that's the aforementioned reason for doing this job. To know that when I actually watched their appearance in on the network today for the first time, and I was just beaming. I couldn't. It's brilliant to see them doing what I've seen them do so often on LWF products, but to see them do it on the big stage like that, and they can only get bigger. They're not going to plateau anytime soon. They are legitimate badasses, and they are exactly what they call themselves, the meat wagon. I mean, I couldn't think of a better tagline than that. They've got so much potential, and again, they're very humble people. There's no ego.
Yeah, we got them on. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
They're just
You know that,
yeah. Very well mannered.
Yeah, I'm so proud of what they've done, and they've got everything, all the tools there to be huge stars, far bigger than now, and to still see them come out on our shows and do what they do, and interact with our audience, and to see them even just see them walk through the door with their cases and everything. It's just a joy. They're a fantastic tag team, and very old school as well. They remind me of great teams back in like the Road Warriors and guys like that. They remind me of those kind of teams. And they're good for the business. Very good.
Absolutely. And certainly they've sort of turned over a new leaf a little bit in the LWF in the past few months. They've sort of changed their ways a little bit. So it seems like now they might be, on some cases, the right side of things, depending on how you see things, I guess.
It took Mosh Pit Mayhem to do it.
And I do have to get to a comment from somebody that's watching and listening to this, and certainly I'm sure you'll have a thought or two on it, but apparently this individual has said that the Wrecking Crew very well may become belt collectors. Would you care to respond to that in any way? That apparently there's a fan that is watching and listening to this and is saying that the Wrecking Crew could be belt collectors coming up here.
Well, they've started it. I think that is, again, it's a very worrying thought, but they've got the credentials to do it. They've got the tag titles already, but you've also got to think the LWF is still going to produce more championships in the coming year. And I don't think you're going to see Nick Cutter without any kind of gold around his waist for too long. He's already proved how good he is in a short space of time. Let's not forget that Nick Cutter is another one that had a bad injury that he came back from, and he came back looking twice as good as what he did when he.
Oh, he's a phenomenal wrestler. Wrestler. We had him on to promote the main event, and I've seen his matches. And this is another guy, young wrestler that in a short amount of time, I mean, he's going to be a world champion, whether it's in the LWF or elsewhere. This guy has got the look. He's got the image. He's got the mannerisms. He's working on his skills in terms of his mic skills and being able to sell himself. And I think he's right there. He's right there in terms of getting gold and big gold. So no question that Nick Cutter, I think, certainly could be the future of the LWF down the road.
Yeah, and that's why they will become belt collectors if they continue down this path. I think it is for everybody else to try and stop them, because they will, if they have a hold of championships in the LWF like the Wrecking Crew do now with the tag ones. That is sort of they're almost holding the company to ransom, because they don't do rules. They don't do following my guidance. They certainly don't. They like to rebel.
Well, Mr. Cutter was vocal about that. To be fair, we had Mr. Cutter on. He was very vocal about your leadership in the LWF.
Oh, certainly. Right in my face at V for Vengeance as well.
Well, we saw that. Listen, it took the entire locker room to get Reynaldo and Nick Cutter basically apart from each other. And your announcement for that unsanctioned street fight, which Nick Cutter, in his own words, actually said he wasn't prepared for. He wasn't prepared for the fact that Reynaldo wasn't going to go to the depths that he was going to go to. So I have a feeling if those two meet again one day, certainly Mr. Cutter will certainly be much, much more prepared. So we'll certainly find out here. We'll certainly find out.
Well, a little thing on that is I actually made that. This is sort of a little exclusive. Actually, I've not said this before, but I made that an unsanctioned street fight purely because Nick Cutter had got in my face and he'd said the things he had to me in front of the crowd. I made it an unsanctioned street fight because I thought he may take Ray lightly, because he wouldn't think that Ray would be able to handle himself in an unsanctioned street fight because he isn't that character usually.
No.
I gave him that platform to do something unexpected to throw Nick off his game, and I suppose it worked.
Well, it definitely did, because Reynaldo is our reigning, defending LWF champion. And we like saying that. Reynaldo liked it, by the way. Reynaldo was happy. So we try to make the champ happy, because Reynaldo has been a big fan of our work. And obviously, what a story he has, training in Canada even to start his career. I mean, he had quite a story. I mean, we didn't even know some of that stuff. I actually had people message me and said, yeah, you know what? I didn't know Reynaldo trained in Canada. I mean, neither did I. We didn't listen. Reynaldo did a rap. He started out with us the first time. He actually did a New York rap from the Notorious B.I.G. And people actually asked me and said, did you go over that with him? Like, no, he just did that on his own. So clearly the champ was very comfortable with us.
Doesn't surprise me. He's got a lot of skills up his sleeve right now.
I didn't know what to expect. I did not know what to expect. He actually messaged us saying he wanted to come on. I'm like, okay, well, he's the champion. I mean, clearly he heard what Mr. Cutter had to say, and certainly he did, and that was obviously an honor. But you did talk about gold coming up and new gold, and that you guys have a really, really burgeoning scene when it comes to the ladies, and you have a big rumble coming up here for our next event, February the 12th, the Lancaster Riot here. And I know I'll continue to butcher that name throughout the past 6 months, the name, and forgive me, I am from New York. I've improved my mic skills, but there are things I do slip up upon. But obviously, all kidding aside, you have a big women's rumble coming up here. Really, really excited about it. And myself with Wildfire Nate Reese and Stephen Cross, we talked a little bit about that. But I want to give the ladies here their due, their respect. Talk about this Rumble, which, again, I think is going to be better than both the men's Royal Rumble and the women's Royal Rumble. So set the tables for us on February the 12th. Who's in and what we can expect.
Well, I'm very proud of this night. I think this is one of our most important events to date. Because we are very proud of the women's division in the LWF. And we're always very proud of the amount of women's content we have. You know, because we don't overlook them in any way.
Absolutely.
We had Beers for Vengeance had three women's matches on it, and each one of them excellent. And we try and we've decided, or rather, Melanie Price decided at the last show she was going to come out and demand that they got this opportunity for the championship belt. It was already under consideration. We're just going to do it a little bit quicker, thanks to Melanie and her demand. But we've sort of come up with this idea, and this was Helena Razor that demanded it again. I was getting it from all sides at Winter of Discontent, that they take the Lancashire Riot, which has been for the last we've had two of them. Obviously, a lockdown severed that chain, but it's always been traditionally for the number one contendership at Slamaganza for the LWF Championship. And the difference with our Riot, I think Mikey Fitzgerald will have gone over it with you, is that
yes, we spoke about it with him.
Over the top rope elimination to the final two, and then the final two must fight it out by a pinfall or submission. And we will do exactly the same. There's going to be 15 women competing in the Lancashire Riot this year. Many of whom are claiming, I'm getting videos sent through to my inbox of many of the participants saying why they're going to win it and why they deserve the championship. So all those will be going out in the next few weeks. You'll be seeing many of these the Riot entrants having their say, but we've got some great talent in there. Like a lot of them made their debut in the LWF, like Kelly Van Ness and Helena Razor, Katie Hawkins, girls like that. But then you've got Aurora Tevez, who beat Kelly Van Ness at Fightmare. Canadian wrestler. She was excellent, and she'll be back for the Riot. We have a number of entrants which will be confirmed in the next week.
Don't spoil it, because we got a few more weeks.
You already know some of them anyway. So,
I actually, to be fair, Mr. Cross and Mr. Reese, they did a good job of promoting the roster, and certainly Mr. Isaiah Quinn on his radio show had on the It Girl Melanie Price, and I'm already on the record of saying that I'd like to see the It Girl Melanie Price win.
Well, I mean, there's another. Well, she had it her way. I'd have just given her the belt.
Well, that might be true. Also, I'm sure that's the case.
But there's one sort of sad thing that's come out of this is that Harley Hudson was who was exceptional at Winter of Discontent, have won a match against Jenny B to pick her number for the Riot, and she chose number 1 because she wanted to prove how good she was and that she could last the distance. And then the next night she broke her foot. So she is sadly out of that match, but she will be sat with myself and Mikey on commentary for the night, which is a real bonus for us. So she's a great talent and really upcoming. But yeah, I won't give anything away, but this is probably the most exciting main event we've had in a long time. And it's got something really special about this show. It's a historic night for us, I think, both for the company and for the women's division.
I'm really excited about it. And recently, you guys obviously just crowned a new tag team champion. Now we're going to have our first ever women's champions. And I know we spoke about this when I've had Cross and Reese, because again, they've been on every week, and I promise I'll get to them. They've been obviously a huge part of the station. But I kind of feel like in a lot of ways, this is the LWF evolving and also the demand, because before we just had a world champion, right? We had our Castle Cup winner, other different things, but now we're adding belts. We're adding a number of them. It almost shows, I think, that the company is like really, really growing. I mean, what does that mean to you then, to be able to, in a short amount of time, we've had a new tag team champion, our first ever. Now we're going to have a new women's champion, our first ever. What does that mean to you now to be adding all of these different things in the LWF?
I mean, this is like the first sort of opportunity I've had to sort of sit down and think about it. It's amazing how much we don't take in because we're so busy. But it's nice from a historical perspective. I like looking at pagematch.net and the database and seeing our records and seeing how many events we've done and our championship holders and the matches that have happened. I like the fact that we have this huge network of things happening all at once now, which is going to make us look a little bit more serious as a promotion. But it does mean a lot to have all these accolades that people can win, and it also gives them a lot of motivation and it gives them something to aim for as well. I mean, it's all well and good going out there and performing consistently and continuously. But when you have a belt that is there and up for grabs, and that can be your Everest, then it really means a lot to a company that people would strive to win something that I've effectively created.
And definitely shout out to the females, because again, their work has been tremendous. I know myself and Wildfire Nate Reese have talked about some of the works, obviously, of Kelly Von Ness, obviously, of course, the girl Melanie Price and Helena Razor, and you guys have had Lana Austin, obviously, on the roster. It's a big roster full of ladies, and really, really excited to be able to showcase that. The only thing I will ask of you, Mr. Bibby, is if you could just turn your volume up, because all of a sudden you went a little bit lower. So I'm sure I'm getting a few comments on that. You went a little lower than you were a few minutes ago. And now I don't hear you at all.
What about now?
Now much better. Now you sound like what you need to. So obviously we got that out of the way just in case, because I'm getting messages left and right. So I want to obviously make sure that we get to all that stuff. And I do want to ask a question on commentary, because you are also obviously a commentator with Mikey Fitzgerald. And shout out to Mikey Fitz, because we're actually bringing him on February the 7th. So we're going to preview the Riot again, and we're going to get through all the matches. So what we've promised to do is each and every month before you guys have your event, we're going to bring Mikey on and go through all that, because you can't talk to us every week. So obviously, Mikey, we know, has the time to be able to do that. So obviously, we're going to announce that here. But talk to me also about being a commentator, because you kind of talked about that role, but in a sense, you are kind of like what Vince McMahon used to be like. You're also a commentator, and you also obviously have your stuff backstage. But in terms of being a commentator versus all the stuff you do in terms of getting this together, how are you able to focus on that and still be able to put on the great effort that you do regularly?
Because commentary is in the moment. It's all an organic reaction. I sit ringside, and as soon as the mic goes on, I'm a fan. But obviously, you use your play-by-play skills. Just that comes naturally. But it's sort of the commentating. I don't even think about it until the moment I sit down. and I love commentating. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'm predominantly play-by-play. I feel very strange when I go on color. Yeah, there's something about that I take a little longer to adapt to, but it is the one thing I really enjoy the most, is being able to sit there and call these matches. And also I like to listen back and sort of see where I can improve myself. But I've found that the calling the main events and the finishes in particular is becoming something I take a lot of pride in. Really, I love telling a story. I love my hero was always Jim Ross. I actually got some advice off him at a convention that I went to. He just before I started, and I've always loved the way he would tell a story. He was never what was going on in the ring was always the most important thing. And he wasn't trying to market too much. He wasn't trying to say what he was supposed to say. He was always giving a genuine, heartfelt reaction to everything he was seeing, and I've always tried to take that with me.
Listen, I'm glad you didn't say Tony Schiavone, because I wasn't a big Tony Schiavone fan in WCW.
Yeah.
I was like, kind of came across too cocky for me. Jim Ross always got it right for those great calls. When I think about the Attitude Era, Stone Cold Steve Austin, or I think about The Rock, Mankind winning his first world championship, kind of like Reynaldo's. I mean, Jim Ross was not on the call, but
hey, I made sure I called Reynaldo's title.
That's why I brought it up. Listen, that's why I was Mr. Bibby. I was seeing your reactions there where I heard you call Reynaldo's. I heard you. I was like, wow, that was like that moment. It was almost like the perfect moment. I mean, do you almost know as a commentator? Because I have to always wonder, because as somebody who kind of does this in myself, I'm always wondering, do you ever know when not to speak or when to speak?
That is actually more of a difficult thing for the color guy. Because I think sometimes you can be on commentary as a color commentator and you think that it's a case of he talks, I talk, he talks, I talk, and it isn't like that. You've got to time it right. You've got to know when it's your moment to talk or when to just sort of leave it in the moment. I always try and leave as many gaps as I can for Mikey to talk, because he's just an encyclopedia on everything.
He's incredible. We had him on, and his knowledge, I mean, it's as good as anybody's legitimately in the business. You talk about his experience as a wrestler, as a referee, a commentator, backstage guy. I mean, his knowledge also about ECW, again, from the New York area. I was impressed about that. I mean, he is literally maybe the heart and soul of the LWF. That's what I call Mikey Fitz. He's the heart and soul of the LWF. So clearly you want to give him his knowledge. He almost reminds me a little bit of a Mike Tenay was. Remember Mike Tenay, his knowledge on professional wrestling? He could talk to you about a hold. He could talk to you about a match. He could talk to you about a moment. He reminds me very much of a Mike Tenay, Mikey Fitz, in that sense.
That's another thing as well. I'm a firm believer a commentator should be able to sell what a hold does and its effects. And I try and do that. And I know Mikey does it fabulously well. Because obviously he's had the experience in the ring of what it feels like and everything. But he's great to work with, because there are times when he says things that I have to just turn the mic off and stop laughing, because some of his puns and some of his catchphrases and stuff, they just I can't stay professional. He's very difficult in that sense, but he's very easy to work with in terms of bouncing off him. You know, this is another thing I must say he does that is overlooked, because I run the show as well as commentate. There are times when I've got to leave the mic for a moment and go and deal with the situation, and he fills in.
And Vince McMahon didn't do that in his days. I will say, when Vince McMahon was calling Monday Night Raw in those first early years of WWE Monday Night Raw, Vince McMahon wouldn't do that. So the fact that you're doing different things, you literally are juggling different hats, no pun intended. So clearly your work definitely exceeds itself, but also shout out again to Mikey Fitz. And I'm really, really excited to be speaking with him again 3 weeks from now. And somebody else that we speak with quite a bit, and I'm going to actually break it here. I wasn't going to break it just yet, but I think it's a good time now in the action to break it, because obviously we speak with Wildfire Nate Reese each and every week. We mention him because he was obviously the teacher at the LWF Academy. So again, please follow the Academy on Instagram at LWF Training. But we're actually going to have on here this coming week, Thursday night, Bob Costin to respond to Wildfire Nate Reese and his actions last week at the Winter of Discontent, and also what Mr. Reese had to say about Bob Costin. And Bob Costin is also going to respond in his words to Stephen Cross. And Bob Costin has said he has listened to the show. He's a big fan. Apparently, he likes the way I say the number one. So that was for you, Bob Costin. But I would almost then have to care to ask you then about Wildfire Nate Reese and his actions at the Winter of Discontent. I mean, he had very heartfelt statements, Wildfire Nate Reese, before the event. We had him on hours before it. He talked about the fact this was his first chance for a tag team title or a championship in over a decade, and he had worked so hard. He'd been put through so much in the LWF, and then he certainly laid Mr. Costin down, and Mr. Costin was in a world of hurt, to say the least. So now that you know Bob Costin is coming on later this week to respond to Nate Reese, give me your thoughts on that, and especially also Wildfire Nate Reese in the LWF.
Well, in terms of his actions in early January, it was pretty shocking. I know he hadn't had a great time prior to that, starting at Honor and Glory when he came back and he ended up doing the raffle. and then in October, he was taking photos in the ring, but he came to do 2 open challenges and we just didn't have any space on the card. So I felt, as bad as I felt, we couldn't offer him anything. He did eventually get a match to his challenge in November, but he was on the wrong end of Balatius's rage that night. So
we heard about it. We broke the whole thing down with him. We felt I actually told him, "Are you sure you wanted to do that?" And he said, "No, I wanted to do it." So
yeah, but I mean, I think it was all built up and it accumulated, and Bob Costin was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But he seemed enthusiastic to team with Bob, and they gave a great account of themselves. I think that was what was a shame that Nate saw fit to give Bob Costin both barrels, so to speak. It's a shame because they did actually produce a great performance against Merseyside Mercenary Squad. And Nate Reese in general, he's a very useful asset to our company. He does some great work. He helps a lot of the younger guys. He was obviously, he was at training yesterday.
Yep.
He did a great job and valuable. So many years of experience. Why would you not want to pass that on to
I was watching a match with him yesterday. We were actually kind of almost war gaming it out. I shouldn't say it, but I'll say the story because he'll listen to it. We were actually watching a match of his. This is maybe like 14, 15 years ago, where he was wrestling a young Soner Durson, and in Wildfire Nate Reese's corner was Big T. So that's how far he goes back. I mean, we're talking like a long, long time. I mean, and I think Nate right now, he's in better shape than he was then, and his knowledge far exceeds almost anybody's you're going to have in the locker room. Well, obviously, aside from Ronaldo, because Ronaldo's a massive star, but in a different sense, Wildfire Nate Reese, what he brings to the table, I kind of think, in a sense, leave aside what's going on with Bob Costin, he is one of the locker room leaders. Is that fair to say that he would be one of your locker room leaders?
He's certainly a locker room example.
Okay.
Just for many reasons. He's a hard worker, very skilled, not just in wrestling as well, several other things.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So he is one of the guys that a lot of our younger talent will look up to, particularly now that he's helping at the academy. And it's great. He's a great presence to have backstage. Very enthusiastic guy as well. He's got so much energy. He had a ludicrous amount of energy on Saturday morning. Nobody should be that.
I'm surprised.
Nobody should be like
surprised.
that. It's yeah. He's like a coiled spring. He's really is. You need that. They need motivating. So.
No, he's a great guy. No, in all seriousness, he has become one of my obviously closest friends. He has been a big part of the station, and certainly I wanted to make sure I give him a very, very huge shout out. Also, everybody, please follow him on Instagram at Nate_Reese_wrestling. And I do also, speaking of assets, want to bring up the asset Stephen Cross, because we kind of touched upon him obviously with his run-in with Mr. Cutter, but he was also in a match with Jack Roberts at Vias for Vengeance, which was pretty much his debut in the LWF or his return to the LWF, whatever way you want to put it at this point. But the asset Stephen Cross, I look at him and I think Mikey Fitz got it right. I didn't realize the Just Incredible sort of comparison, but he's got that look in terms of his build, his physique. I mean, he might be in the best shape of anybody in the locker room. He might be the guy. He's all over the place. I mean, he's really come into his own as a talker. I think since he's been with us over the past 5 or 6 months, he's become a great talker. He's a great wrestler. He's physical. I mean, he's got a good look here for the company. I mean, where do you see things with the asset Stephen Cross?
He is a very unpredictable one. Brought him in, like you said, against Jack Roberts for his LWF debut, and it was a good contest, good solid contest. And he more than gave an account of himself. He then took the risk of walking in there with the Wrecking Crew to team with them, and it was an interesting clash, not of styles but of personalities. And you saw the altercation he had with Nick Cutter, but also that shows that he's no fear or worry about standing up to people with egos or anything like that. So he's and of course physically a specimen, absolutely an absolute workhorse when it comes to his physique and things like that. And he is exactly what he says he is. He is an asset to the LWF.
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. And again, his physique, it's almost like he's got 0% body fat. It's like everywhere I look on Instagram, and it's like, how is this guy doing it? I mean, he's legitimately, I have to say, pound for pound, the best shape of anybody on the LWF's roster. So huge shout out to the asset Stephen Cross. Please do follow him on Instagram at SparkyS316, Twitter at the asset1169. But there is somebody else I do want to get to when it comes to the LWF, because now he's a part of our station, and we just lost Mr. Ste Bibby. So apparently Mr. Bibby, I guess, got disconnected. So we'll certainly wait for Mr. Bibby to come back on here. It does happen from time to time. People get off the stream, whether it's their internet connection or whether it's just whatever things. I know that Mr. Bibby was having some phone troubles here, so hang on tight for station identification. Hang on tight for Mr. Bibby to put the bat signal on and get back in here, as we are here live on Sportswire Radio, Sportnarium.com, also /player. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, as we are waiting for the man, the myth, the legend. Who knows? Maybe the Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew, if you're listening to this, have you wiretapped? Have you attacked Ste Bibby? I mean, clearly the Wrecking Crew might only just be belt collectors. They very well could be also just in the business of laying down the law, to say the least. So we are certainly hopeful that Mr. Bibby will come back on here. You just never know what happens. Sometimes these things do happen, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe the Wrecking Crew are on a mission. Maybe Nick Cutter is out there. He listened to it. He heard something about what Ste Bibby had to say, and he said, you know what? We got to go find Mr. Bibby. We got to sort him out, and who knows? It could be 1, 2, 3, but we'll certainly find out here. But before Mr. Bibby comes back on here, if you are listening to this or watching this, I would highly recommend that you give a follow to the LWF on Twitter at LWF, Instagram at the LWF Wrestling. Also like the Facebook page at LWF, and find out why the LWF is one of our favorite wrestling companies, and why anytime, anywhere, if you need information, you want to go seek out a wrestling promotion or a professional company, and there he is. There he is. Mr. Bibby, you know what I just said? I said the Wrecking Crew apparently heard what you said about him 15 or so minutes ago, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe Nick Cutter heard what Ste Bibby said, and Getsky and Stone were out there, and they just all of a sudden wiretapped you, and who knows what happened there. So we're glad you're safe and sound. That the
I was like Fightmare all over again.
Well, I'm glad that you're okay. I'm glad you're back with us. But what we were saying before you came back and you got booted off was, I did want to bring up somebody that I really think is important in professional wrestling and what he brings to the table also, because he's a great talker. He's a great mouthpiece. That's the guiding light, Isaiah Quinn, because obviously he has a show with us and we've had him on. He's a good friend. And I want to talk about what he brings to the table. Obviously, he's a huge part of with the Worst Tag Team. And we had Gorgon on. Shout out to Gorgon. And obviously the guiding light, Isaiah Quinn, was your Grinch, quote unquote, kind of fitted him, right? At the Fight Man Before Christmas. But talk to me about what the guiding light, Isaiah Quinn, brings to the table along with what for the rest of the locker room in terms of his ability to speak?
His ability to speak is effortless. It's incredible, and the way he is sort of, I know Mikey will have touched on this and everything as well, but his ability to redesign himself to suit the product, and he could be anything you want him to be, Isaiah, but his ability to immediately get a reaction out of an audience and a crowd is incredible. I'm almost jealous of how he does it.
Yeah, he finds a way. I mean, his ability to talk, I have to say, and I joke with him all the time because we've gotten to know him a bit off the air, and just he's almost like, I think he's one of the best in the business. And I really think it's a lost art in terms of getting somebody over. I mean, talk to me about that in terms of the importance. Do you think it is to have somebody like a guy like Isaiah Quinn? Because wrestling managers are kind of a lost art, especially in the UK.
They are, but I think people like Isaiah can bring it back. When you see, like you just said, the ability and the importance that he possesses to try and get somebody else across, and his importance to somebody else's career just by saying the right things and sort of guide, like, no pun intended, guiding them, which is what he does. He is a very inspirational person, I think. And he, when you talk about how he talks, when he speaks, you can almost feel his understanding of wrestling. It's very palpable, that knowledge he has of what gets a reaction and what will get a guy over and what will make a story work and things like that. He is an absolute fountain of knowledge when it comes to that kind of thing.
He almost reminds me of, in music, a music producer, where a music producer could go out and say, "Oh, you know what? I heard that, and maybe you have to play the note a little differently, or you have to sing it a different way, or maybe that lyric doesn't fit in, or whatever it might be in a song." He's almost like a music producer. And I have a few comments I have to get to. Mikey Fitzgerald says that he liked Tony Schiavone in WCW. Did you really like Tony Schiavone as an announcer in WCW? I was a mixed bag on that. I do also want to give a shout out to Eitan Steen, because Eitan Steen is watching. I want to give him a huge shout out. I'll definitely ask you a thought or two on him in a second. And I did get a few comments from a fan or two that said that the Wrecking Crew was certainly considering maybe coming down and wiretapping you. But there was also said that Mr. Bibby does talk too much. But I'll plead the fifth on who that might be. But obviously, be that as it may, talk to me about Eitan Steen and what he brings to the table. Obviously, huge part of Shining Wizard. We've spoken with him off the air. He's watching, and I like to give him a mention because, well, he's watching and supporting us. So give me a thought or two on him.
No, we love having Eitan Steen on our shows, and he is sort of the beating heart of Shining Wizard, and he's such a colourful character, and I think he really brings the best out of Clash and Big Ron, and I think Shining Wizard are all the better for having him there. He's not only shown how good he is in tag competition, but he's also had some great singles contests this year and last year. So, well, I say last year, it feels like this year. He was very impressive in a 6-person frenzy match we had. He had a very big win over Jack Roberts at Summer Smash. You always guaranteed a show with Eitan Steen, and he's done some great work outside of LWF as well. And he'll go far. He really will.
Absolutely. Huge shout out to him, and he appreciated the kind words. So want to make sure that I do recognize him, and I think we owe him at some point. I think we owe him an appearance on the show. So we'll certainly
great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll get him on. No, definitely. There's a lot of guys that I owe to get on. I mean, there's people that have messaged me left and right. I mean, there is somebody, if I will get killed if I don't bring him up, and that is the scenario Nathan Gunn, because I've had him on a couple of times, and I'm sure Davey Getzky will hear this, and because obviously he and the scenario Nathan Gunn have had a long-running feud, even going back to COVID. So I promised I'd work in at least a scenario Nathan Gunn shout-out and a mention. We've had him on twice, and he's always liking even my non-wrestling stuff. He likes my stuff with my universities. He likes my stuff with all the different things I do. So I want to make sure I give him a shout-out. So Talk to me about the scenario, Nathan Gunn, because I have to say one thing about him is he's very confident in his speech. He's a very good talker. He's got a tag team, obviously, with Blazing Guns, obviously, with Conrad Blaze, which we think will eventually get back here in the tag team scene and have some success. So talk to me about the scenario, Nathan Gunn.
Well, Nathan has had a good start to the sort of the relaunch of the LWF, because he had a great match with Davey Getsky at Slamaganza.
Yep.
And he's sort of, that was like a really high point. And since he sort of dipped his toe into different things, like he was in the Frenzy qualifiers, and now he started the tag team with Conrad, they've had a less than ideal start. They've had a bit of bad luck, but I think they've got the potential to be something big. I know Nathan likes to bring Billy and Bart to the fights. These two, the right and left hands. Always interesting to see which one does the more damage in a match. But yeah, he's great. He's always good to have around, and he's one that sort of, again, he's a bit like Steen. He can work all kinds of matches, and he'll always do a good job in any of them, and it's very unpredictable as well. He'll pull a win out of nowhere. So yeah, again, another one to watch for 2022, definitely.
Yeah, I got a feeling he's going to have a big year, and obviously I know he came up short against Mr. Getsky a couple different times, but I have a feeling we haven't heard the last of that. Something tells me that. And I do have a comment from a fan that apparently disagrees and says that Nathan Gunn is rubbish. So that's apparently that's what he says. So obviously that might be the fans opinion. Listen, we're getting a lot of fans from all over here, and certainly
they're probably a Davey Getsky fan.
Well, listen, Mr. Getsky apparently has some fans out there. I mean, Mr. Getsky does have some fans.
I've heard that rumor as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a few. I mean, and the asset Stephen Cross, have to give him a shout out because he's now watching us. So I have to make sure I recognize him. The asset Stephen Cross is a very, very good guy. We've got about another 20 or so minutes with, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the owner, the boss himself of the LWF, Mr. Ste Bibby. Of course, a tremendous honor. But I can't stress enough again, if you are watching and listening to this, please follow the LWF on Instagram, the LWF Wrestling. Like the Facebook page, LWF. We're up to 1,400 plus likes. Twitter, LWF. Also subscribe to the YouTube page at the LWF, because I guarantee you, for clips, for videos, highlights, promos, some of the best in the business, this is the company. And like I said, we've got a big event coming up here, February the 12th, which we're going to be talking about each and every Friday here with the asset Stephen Cross and Wildfire Nate Reese. That's 10 p.m. British Standard Time, sportnarium.com/player. We'll be talking, of course, the event and much, much more in the LWF. So make sure every Friday you check us out with myself, Nate, and the asset Stephen Cross. But also February 7th, we'll be back with Mikey Fitz. We'll be speaking about the upcoming Landshire Riot. We'll be talking about the women's match. We'll be talking about the Rumble. We'll be talking about, I'm sure Reynaldo will be on the car. The Wrecking Crew will be in the house. I'm sure we'll see a lot of action. Make sure, again, you stick with us, but follow the LWF and all the great things that this company is doing. And, of course, the owner of the LWF, the man himself. And like I said, we didn't want Vince McMahon. We didn't want Tony Khan. We didn't want Billy Corgan. We turned him down because we got the best owner in all of professional wrestling, and we were not paid to say that. And, of course, that is Ste Bibby, and I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. So, obviously, we spoke a lot about the LWF, and I want to ask you, for goals for 2022, I always like to ask this to different people. Now that the new year has started, what are your goals for the company?
Well, for 2022, I want to make sure that we are sort of secure business-wise. It's a boring start, but it's very important. In terms of the away from that, I'd like to network more with other promotions and meet other promoters, and hopefully become involved, to maybe do some collaboration with other companies. I think it's important to sort of, if we want to get our name out there, to get some recognition as well. And I also hope that in 2022 that a lot of our guys will start being able to take work elsewhere and take what they've learned at the LWF and use it around the country. There's so many goals, and they all end with us being a lot bigger. So the overall goal is to be bigger.
I think you will. I definitely have a very good feeling that you guys will most certainly be bigger. And I was also curious because you spoke a little while ago about some different veterans. And in the past, we've seen Sona Durson, Joey Hayes here, Big Guns Joe, we've seen his success. When it comes to having those veterans, and you kind of talked about maybe having some old school wrestlers, some veteran guys that come in and out that might not have been with the company or come through the academy, with those wrestlers, not so much their wins and losses, but when they're in that dressing room, how important is it to have them in terms of maybe paired up or talk with a Nathan Gunn or a Davey Getsky or a younger wrestler, and the fact that these guys have had massive success? We've seen Sona Durson. We've seen Joey Hayes all over the place. We've seen a Big Guns Joe. These guys aren't here every week in the LWF. It's different than a Nate Reese. It's different than a Ronaldo even, who's our world champion. But these guys have experiences. They're not here. When you bring that talent in there, what you're trying to accomplish from them being here?
Well, I'm a big believer you can never learn too much. And I think having guys like that around, you are putting the newer guys or the guys that are sort of just starting out or have only been doing this a couple of years, you're putting them in the right environment to begin with. They're in amongst people that are going to give them nothing but a positive influence. And I try and bring in as many of these people as possible because they are going to in the long run pass something on to the LWF guys that they're going to carry with them throughout their career. And it's not just them coming to the LWF as well, us going elsewhere, us going to TNT Extreme Fields like we did recently, to a huge wrestling festival sort of thing like that. They're going to be in and amongst and in and around guys that are seasoned veterans who have been doing this for a long time and who have skills that they can pass on. And as long as I keep our guys in that kind of environment and I bring those guys to us, we're always going to keep moving forward. We're never going to take a backward step.
For those that are watching and listening to this that might be back home where I am in New York in the tri-state area, I'd always like to ask a question to somebody like yourself who's very qualified to maybe answer this question. How has the wrestling scene in the UK, you think, evolved over the past few years? Because again, in New York, for some of my people that are watching and hearing you the first time that might not even heard some of the stuff we do with the LWF, because you're the boss, you're the owner. So when you give this answer to my question, it's going to sound a lot more of a big deal, a lot more professional sounding. How do you think the scene has evolved maybe for the better over the past few years?
Well, it's just there's so many different promotions appearing, and it's a case of you look at the map and there's more dots on it now than there was before, where promotions are opening up. I'm not saying it's a territorial thing or anything like that, but I mean,
Sure.
as exciting as that is, but it is just there is so much more on offer now here, and the good thing about I can only speak for the Northwest and our area. Currently, I'd like to see more. That's my personal goal. I'd like to see more around the country this year. But when it comes to the Northwest, the promotions here work together, and they there's no real rivalry there. It's all about sort of helping each other out. There's a really good spirit, and because we want the business to grow over here more and become more successful, because the more successful it is, the more successful we all are individually. So I think it's the fact that so many people are attempting to create different promotions in different areas, and there's far more options now. There's far more for fans to go to.
I think one of the things that appeals to me about what you guys do is I actually had on a professional wrestling owner, sort of owner for a company here in the New York, New Jersey area, Pro Wrestling Magic. This was about maybe 8 or 9 months ago. And they were on Fight TV here in America and probably broadcasted worldwide and such. And listen, the company had some talent. Some of their wrestlers actually had done some important things and such. And Cody Rhodes came through there, yada, yada, yada. But I actually felt that what you guys do here, whether it's in the LWF as an example, I felt was much more what I might see on TV in a sense, because I felt that the independent wrestling scene, especially even where I am in the tri-state area, was very, how can I put it, gimmicky. when I watch what you guys do in terms of the video editing, the promos, the matches, I still get a sense that you guys are, you might be a small company, but you guys really, to me, are on the same level of a WWE in terms of the experience and just the energy. And when you hear something like that, because again, it's different if I speak with a wrestler, because I realize they're going to have to say, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, because they're worried about you hearing it and you saying it. But when I say it, because I've had actually somebody on that's been in your shoes, and I watched their stuff and I've watched your stuff, I actually prefer what you're doing far more. Talk to me about how you strive for something, maybe like what I'm watching, and what does that mean to you when I say that comparison?
Well, I hope this answers your question. I've always wanted our product to look like what I used to watch when I was younger. So obviously I grew up in the Attitude Era, and I used to watch.
I could see that with the WrestleMania jersey.
I used to watch the Raw. What I used to love about Raw back in the day was that it was all very. I know a lot of it was very soap opera, but it was done in a way that you felt like as soon as Raw started, it was all being done improvised. It was all just happening there and then. There was nothing was sort of segmented or broken up, or there wasn't tons of marketing or advertising breaking it up or anything like that. It was all like a real episode of something. So I've always tried to produce our show in the same vein. So you will see the cut scenes, you will see the storylines and the little history promos telling you how we got there and things like that. And I always thought that would separate us and our content from many others. We are so heavily storyline based. Mikey would have told you that.
Oh, we were talking about that quite a bit.
Yeah,
we were talking about
you've got
that.
to care about what you're watching. I think you've got to care about the story, or else it's just the circus to me. And I've always taken pride in the fact that our product tries to tell a story continuously. It never strays from that. There's always a reason behind everything, and that's the same with the production. I will do the intros for shows, and I will do the history segments before main events, to tell that story and to make it just that little bit more dramatic. I think that's why they've been well received, because we've stuck to that format and that formula.
February 12th is upcoming. It's a few short weeks away. We've talked about the Rumble. We've talked about the event. And I want to ask you this question for those who might consider buying a ticket, or even those who haven't followed your social media channels, but now you have a chance to give them a reason to follow, or even a chance to go out and spend 10 pounds, 8 pounds, whatever it is, to come out February the 12th. Talk to me about why somebody watching and listening to this should follow the LWF. If I haven't sold them for whatever reason, God help them. But also talk to me about why somebody who might be watching and listening to this, who is nearby in the town of Clory, should come out February the 12th and see you guys live.
I think when you come to watch an LWF show, you get very much the unexpected. Anything can happen on our shows. There's a lot of crowd interaction. You get the full experience for your entrance fee. You get great wrestling. You get unpredictable happenings. You get the soap opera. You get it right up close as well. So many things happen within. We have, if say February 12th, Shining Wizard will not be competing, but Shining Wizard will be amongst the crowd. They will be around the merch stalls. You will get to see the wrestlers up close. You will get to interact with us. We don't just give you a show and then disappear. It is unpredictable. It is usually wild and chaotic. And
that's why I like the company.
That's what you want for your money. You want entertainment, but you also don't want it to be predictable, and you want to not know what's coming. And that's what you get from an LWF show. And definitely an event like the Lancashire Riot, there's no better platform for the unpredictable than the Riot.
I'm looking forward to this Riot. I'm really, really excited to be speaking about this over the next couple of weeks. I can genuinely say that I'm not as excited for the men's and women's Royal Rumble and WWE, but rather what you guys are doing.
Well, if you look at, if you wanted a taster of what of a Riot in the past on Powered 4 TV, the Lancashire Riot of 2020, right before the lockdown started. That is on there, so you can see the Lancashire Riot from then for the number one contendership. That's worth a watch if you just want a taste of what kind of thing you can expect. But obviously this year, with it being all the women, that's even more unpredictable.
I'm excited about this. No seriousness. I'm really, really excited about this. And I do want to give a plug to somebody that's supporting me back home here in New York, and that is John Gonzalez. John actually runs a group called the Sports Authorities, and I'm always getting to post all of my content in there. He has 3,000 members in his group. So I definitely want to make sure I give John a huge shout out, because John obviously will definitely spread the word about the LWF, and he has been a big supporter of mine. He's actually a big part of my live Friday night shows here in the New York area when we talk about American stuff. So I want to recognize John and his support and his friendship. I'm getting a lot of messages actually from people that are finally tuning into the LWF. We're getting some people that are following you guys. So I want to definitely shout everybody out there.
That's
again,
fantastic. Thank you.
February the 12th. Cannot stress it enough how excited I am about this. We've got a rumble from the women's side. I'm sure Bob Costin, we have him here later this week. He's going to set the tables for us on Nate Reese's responses. I'm sure Stephen Cross is going to have something to say. Reynaldo is going to be back with us. Mikey Fitz is going to be back with us. I mean, we got a lot going on here in the LWF. The Guiding Light Isaiah Quinn's radio shows are on our station. I mean, we've had Gorgon in the past. Actually, Gorgon, I got to throw a Gorgon reference in there, because Gorgon is the meanest luchador of Manchester. I mean, in a sense, you at least have to smile about Gorgon. There's something, in a sense, they're almost lovable, in a sense, the worst.
I remember Gorgon's first appearance was in the Lancashire Riot.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, and he was tied up in knots by Jack Roberts. But since he's found his niche, though, he has found his where he needs to be. In terms of his tag team with Vinnick and the Worst and Isaiah, that combination has really worked for Gorgon, and he's found like a comfort zone now, and I think that'll do nothing but good for him.
Absolutely. No, listen, I'm really, really excited. That was a fun, when we had Gorgon on, that was a fun segment. I have to say, when we had Getsky and Cutter on, it was like, but when we had Gorgon on, it was kind of fun. I walked away from it almost as a fan of the Worst. I really kind of liked the Worst tag team in a sense. I joked with Gorgon that they were the worst tag team, but they were in a way kind of the best at what they do, as crazy as that sounds.
You are engaging with the Worst. Oh dear.
I was kind of
no route back now.
I'm going to make you laugh before we get out of here and get some closing thoughts and a few other things. I always wanted to ask you this question because I see it all the time on LWF packages and LWF promos. The top hat. What was about the top hat? You almost
the fedora.
Yeah. What was that about? What got you wearing that?
I don't know. I probably do actually. I wear a lot of hats.
Okay.
I've got them hanging up everywhere. In fact, I mean, they're all up
there.
Okay.
Yes, I see that. Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
I think it's got something to do with the forehead. I don't like the forehead, so I kind of try and cover it up as much as I can. You probably noticed. But I like wearing suits, and I just thought it topped. There was something missing from the suit, and that was it. And I've added like a cowboy hat to it now as well. So
I like the cowboy hat. I like the cowboy hat.
I'm just trying to. I went with it the first show, and I thought, well, I can't change it now. That's got to stick. So yeah, always have to wear a hat, but with the suit, it's always got to be a trilby or a fedora or the cowboy one.
I think the hat fits you well. I don't know if you remember when Vince McMahon got his head shaved at WrestleMania, he was wearing that goofy hat for a while, and it didn't look right, but you pull it off well. I have to say, wrestling owners with hats, maybe we're not used to on TV, like Tony Khan or Billy Corgan, but when you pull the hat off, I have to say, I think you can do it. Paul E. I mean, although to be fair, Paul Heyman should have been wearing a top hat for like 20 years ago. So
yeah, I'm worried my hair's going in the same way as his.
No, I don't think it's that bad. Listen, Paul Heyman, if he was kind of so funny at the end of ECW, you know, just look at him. He had the Wolfman Jack look, and it was like you were trying to get his hair to push it back, and you're okay. I think you're gonna be all right. You're gonna hang in there. You're definitely.
I think that if I didn't have the long hair coming out of it, I don't think it would work as well.
All right, fair enough. So listen, we have time, and I have been told, by the way, I have to bring this up because Reynaldo has said, and I've actually gone on the record in saying this, God willing, I can one day get to an LWF event into the town of Clory. Obviously, we know that things are going to subside eventually with COVID. Reynaldo would actually like to see me on the call with you and Mikey Fitz. I mean, I realize I'm asking for a lot here from you, but one day, if I do get the opportunity to go down live and see you guys in the town of Clory, would it be possible that there would be room for an extra mic? I could even bring mine. I mean, what do you think?
There's always room. We had Melanie Price commentate on at Fightmare before Christmas, and we had Kelly Van Ness do it at Winter of Discontent. We've had Reynaldo on commentary at VS for Vengeance, so there's always a spare mic, always.
All right, so that gives me hope. And listen, I realize if some of them can do it, I could certainly do it. And again, Reynaldo, I was surprised. I have to say before we get out of here and get closing thoughts from, because I realize your time is precious and it's a tremendous honor to have the opportunity to speak with you. It's not every day you get to speak to a wrestling owner. Let me put it that way. But I was surprised at just how well of a speaker Reynaldo was, because sometimes you do these and there's certain wrestlers that come on and it's like, it's almost like you're prodding them. Reynaldo was just like, I mean, my God, it was like I knew him for 20 years. It was like he was honestly one of the best talkers. I was like so surprised. This is why I bring that up, because I think it's really important for a wrestler to be able to cut that promo, to be able to sell themselves, because I realize there are some wrestlers that you have that it's kind of tough for them, or they may not want to do it. But I think in order to sell yourself, you have to be your biggest salesman. Talk to me, though, for you, because you're the boss, you're the big cheese, but you're also a commentator. How important is it that you stress to your talent that they have to be able to speak for themselves to get their message over?
Well, I think it's the biggest thing about the talking is it shows character, because you can post endlessly on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and everything. You can do all the social media you want, but if you don't show some expression and show some character or some personality, it's empty. And I think that's why Reynaldo is so good, because he's got a lot of character and a lot of expression in his voice, and he really he means everything he says, and his personality comes out in his voice. You don't want to come across as robotic, and if you don't talk or you give people very little, then there's not a whole lot they can give back to you. So I think I always look at it this way: if you're going to give an interview or you're going to cut a promo, the people listening to it, if they were to write about it or talk about it, they should never have to look for things to talk about. They should already go, wow, he said this, 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 and this, and this. They should never have to try and pick things out that they found interesting. It should all resonate with them. And if you don't talk or you don't use your vocal skills and your face and things like that, you'll go nowhere. And that's why you can't solely rely on the internet and you can't solely rely on visuals. You've got to give them some personality and some character. That's the best way I can describe it, really.
Listen, Hulk Hogan wasn't exactly the greatest wrestler in the world, but he could talk a microphone and he could sell you anything visually, right? Stone Cold Steve Austin, after he broke his neck against Owen Hart, wasn't the same wrestler, but he could talk better than anybody. So yes, there are some examples of a Shawn Michaels that can do both, but you've got to be able to talk on this, because
this is why Isaiah Quinn is so good as well, because that is him, his ability to
I think he's better now than when he was as a wrestler. I think he's better right now in terms of what he brings to the table when he was still wrestling, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's so important. Personality and character is everything, particularly in this day and age where I think a lot of, it's easy to get into a robotic sort of way of being and way of acting. Characters and personalities are more crucial now than ever. And I think that they're lacking more nowadays than ever. And we need them back.
Well, we're definitely going to try, because the LWF is going to make sure that we do those things. And again, follow the LWF, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Make sure you get on all those channels. And I realize that your time is precious, so this is a tremendous honor to be able to speak with you, to talk about the LWF, your journey, getting involved in this company, but most importantly, looking to the future and looking forward to February 12th for our upcoming event here with the Riot and all the great things that are going to take place. And obviously, I can't thank you enough for allowing us to continue to speak about the LWF and all the different wrestlers that we've named off here that have been on with us. And I can't thank you enough because you could tell them no. You could tell them no. Don't go with that American. Don't go with that New Yorker. Don't go on his show. You could say that. That's why I want to take the time, and I'm not blowing smoke up your rear. I really sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for giving us each and every week that opportunity to speak with the different talent, and especially Nate Reese and Stephen Cross every single week. So I appreciate the fact that your trust and faith in that I'm not embarrassing your company and I'm trying to showcase and help at the same time. So I definitely want to thank you for that. But I want to ask you, as I ask every person that comes on the show, it could be in any walk of life, any wavelength, whatever it might be. Is there one or two moments for you that stand out most in the LWF so far?
Yeah, I think I won't do them in any order.
Sure.
Mosh Pit Mayhem was the most. It's the best example of something in your head materializing in front of you. Everything I imagined that to be, and Mikey will be more proud of it because it was his invention. Everything that I imagined that to be happened exactly how I imagined it, and also it was the sacrifice that those competitors in that match made for my company was so appreciated. So that was a big moment. I'd say the invention of Slamaganza for me. I always wanted to do my own WrestleMania, and Slamaganza was my thought. That was in my head. I had the blueprints out for it. I wanted it to run as a WrestleMania for us. And when I first came out for Slamaganza, the first one, that's a big moment for me because that's like a dream. That's a bucket list ticked off. It's a dream realized. And I think there's been so many, but I think the riot on February the 12th is going to be one of those moments. I've no doubt in my mind that that's going to be a groundbreaker and going to be one of the ones that I point out as being a big moment for me.
I got a very good feeling about it because, in all seriousness, every month you guys have put on an event, it has gotten better and better and better. This company is hitting its stride, ladies and gentlemen. It is a company that's going to take off. 2022 is going to be the year of the LWF. And there's an old adage, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I have a very good feeling that the UK wrestling scene's boat is going to be lifted because of the LWF, its talent, its champion, the reigning, defending champion, the top of the table, Reynaldo, even the Wrecking Crew and the entire talent, the locker room that we've got, Synergy. We see what Synergy is doing. We've seen, obviously, what Wildfire Nate Reese is doing, obviously, with Bob Costin. We've seen the Guiding Light Isaiah Quinn. We've seen the It-Girl Melanie Price. We've seen Helena Razor, Shining Wizard. I mean, there is a list of talent here. It's going to be a company that is going to do bigger and better things. Mikey Fitz has been a big part of that, but most importantly, our guest here, a tremendous honor, the owner. Like I said, forget McMahon, forget Corgan, forget Khan, turned them all down. I wanted Ste Bibby because this man is really the guy. He is the guy. Nobody puts their heart and soul more into this company, into this business, more than Ste Bibby. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. But for you, my friend, it is a tremendous honor. I want to give you the floor. I want to give you any closing thoughts, any social media you'd like to plug that we haven't, anything you'd like to say to the LWF fans or to the locker room or to anybody that might have just heard of you for the first time here live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and sportnarium.com/player. I turn it now over to you. So I want to give you closing thoughts, anything you want to plug that we haven't or you want to replug, and anything you want to say to anybody LWF related. The floor is yours, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, all I can say is that we are going to continue producing content every month. It's going to increase as well, so there'll be more bonus YouTube footage. So check out our YouTube channel, is LWF Television. A lot of exclusive interviews and bonus footage on there that's going to be going out. That is going to be advertising the full shows, which are going to be going on Powered 4 TV very regularly now. We've got 3 or 4 shows lined up for Powered 4 TV. Our October show is going out this week, hopefully by Tuesday. So that's one to watch. And just keep up to date with what we give you on Facebook as well, because there's a lot of exclusive Facebook videos I like to throw out there. It's just keep following what we do and keep following the stories, because even if you can't get to the shows, we will always try and make sure you have an experience in some way that keeps you up to date, and you can still follow the wrestlers and have your favorites. We are on Twitter, LWF, the LWF on there. You'll find us very easily. Instagram is the same. The Academy is always worth a look to see what sort of talent's coming through. You can see them in their early stages before they become stars, which I've no doubt they will be. And I also have a page, an announcer page, Ste Bibby Wrestling Announcer on Facebook, if you fancy joining that. And just keep enjoying what we do, because the more you enjoy it, the more I enjoy it, and the more our talent benefits from it.
Absolutely. Again, follow all that stuff. Cannot stress it enough. The LWF Wrestling Instagram, LWF The on Twitter, LWF like the Facebook page, like Steve's page on Facebook as well. We're going to do that right after we get off the air here. Also, LWF Training on Instagram as well. Subscribe to the YouTube page. And listen, if you ever need any audio content, I'd be happy to give you anything LWF related for your YouTube page. If you need, I'm happy to send that over. If you'd like me to send that to Mikey Fitz or anybody else, if you thought it could help even promote, because we're always talking LWF every Friday night, 10 p.m. on sportnarium.com/player only, because for whatever reason, Nate and Cross don't want to go on the camera. Well, because Cross, it's a scheduling conflict thing, and Nate, we've been asking Nate to go on the camera, and Nate hasn't gone on the camera yet, which you would think Nate would want to go on camera, but we'll definitely get to that. We'll figure it out. Also, Bob Costin will be with us. Also, we'll have Tom McManus of Pinfall Pro. We'll have him on later this week, so I definitely want to shout out Tom McManus. But obviously, the boss, it is a tremendous honor again. I cannot thank you enough for this opportunity. Congratulations on all the success with the LWF. I cannot wait for February 12th. I cannot wait to talk about this company each and every week. And most importantly, one day, I can't wait to come down to the town of Clary and meet all you guys and watch you. I'm really, really excited about that. So I thank you for all of your support. Thank you for all that you do for us. And I'm looking forward to a big, big, big 2022 and a very, very big February 12th. Congratulations, and thank you for this opportunity. I can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart.
My pleasure. Thank you. It was fun.
As we're here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show with the boss, the owner of the LWF, and also the commentator, of course, that you hear each and every event here for the LWF. That is Mr. Ste Bibby. As I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager here of Sportzwire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And if you are on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, we'll be back tomorrow night with Florida pro wrestler Cole Bohannon. So don't know what Cole's going to say, but I'm certainly looking forward to what Mr. Bohannon has to say. So we'll be back Monday night with that. Wednesday night will also be with Tom McManus of Pinfall Pro Wrestling, of course, a very good friend of Mr. Isaiah Quinn. And we'll be back later this week with Bob Costin for his response to Nate Reese. We'll get Nate Reese's reaction. We'll have the Acid Stephen Cross. So we'll continue to talk LWF later in the week, Thursday night, Friday night. Here's sportnarium.com/player. And if you are on sportnarium.com/player, I don't know what you'll get. I'll have to schedule that, so you'll have to wait a little while. But obviously, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, I thank you. We'll be back tomorrow night, Wednesday night. We were just with Ste Bibby, the owner of the LWF. Again, follow the LWF Facebook at LWF, Twitter, LWF the YouTube, the LWF Wrestling, also Instagram, the LWF Wrestling. Thank you very much for your support. We'll be back here tomorrow night. Have a great night. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. All right, so let's disconnect here.